Good morning. My name is John Carbula, and I will be serving as the vice moderator. I would like to gather us in prayer prior to the beginning of our meeting. Dear loving and gracious God, we gather here in your name. We gather here to feel your spirit. We gather here to then go forth and do your work in the world. The human experience is one of great complexity. All of us bring our own individual selves and our lives to this sacred space. Let us feel within ourselves and see in the faces of all the others gathered here this morning the divine spark of love, of grace, and of compassion. May our words and our actions reflect our love of God and our love for each other. Amen.
Thank you, John. We need to approve last year's minutes. That was in your board packet, so hopefully some folks were able to review those. And I'm gonna move that we approve the minutes for last year's meeting. And we have a second, Ken Morrison. Any discussion? None. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you for that. Now, we need to approve this agenda. I see a Mackenzie. Okay. And so we have a moved by Mackenzie and seconded. Discussion? All right, we need the microphone. Dean has a microphone there that he's going to bring around. Oh, okay, sorry. There's one at the back.
Good morning, Ann Thompson. Is this on?
Yes. So what I would ask is that if you're asking to add something to the agenda, give us a topic, and we will, just so that we know what it is, not to do the discussion now, but go ahead.
What do you mean?
We're now moving to approve the agenda, and this is the discussion on approving the agenda.
Yeah, I don't approve the agenda.
Okay. What do you want to say about it? What do you want to add or change?
I feel that the process that we've gone through during attempting, and I do understand it, blending the order of worship in the service with the meeting. Okay, is this better? Okay.
Yes.
I just feel that it was a bit, I want to say non-transparent. I did not, if there was a call to worship, if there was a call to order to the annual meeting, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear a number of the things happen that we typically use in institutional meetings of all kinds, the Robert's Rules of Order. There was no quorum established that I've heard. And then suddenly there was a vote. I wasn't even aware that we were voting on, a new leadership. And then suddenly we were commissioning them. So I feel like the agenda that we have been working under just was not transparent. And I feel a bit violated. I sing in the choir. Granted, some things were missed. I never saw the leadership, the full thing. I know it was sent out. I quite honestly did not have time to look through all that email because I've been away, and also because I had guests this weekend, and it comes pretty late in the week. So I think the transparency is lacking in this meeting. And I don't know about anybody else, but I really appreciate if we could kind of start over and back up and do it according to what we understand as the fairness principles of the Robert's Rules of Order, I would feel more comfortable participating in the meeting if that were the case.
Okay, I'll respond a bit to that. We wanted to make the commissioning of the new leaders a bit more sacred than it has been in the past, so we moved that into the worship service. And in order to do that, we did send things out a week or so. The nominating slate was a little tricky getting it, and people nominated themselves this morning too. So that's a little bit in flux, but we did mention it. There were 50 copies of it here, and the whole packets. We have whole packets that are here as well. So we have done our best to be transparent about it. And I understand that not everybody clicks on everything that is sent out in the meeting, but we also were told that people didn't want the budgets to go out in an email just about the budget, that they wanted that to be a bit more in-house. So we're navigating and trying to run that fine line between making sure you have all the information available, and we have made all of the personnel budgets available to you as well. So we're way more transparent this year than has been for the last 10 years around the budget. And we've had 3 meetings with folks about the budget as we developed it. So I'm sorry if it's felt not transparent to you. We have tried to do that much more transparently. And while we did not call ourselves to order in the worship service, we did have the call to worship. We did state at the very beginning this is what was going to happen. We were going to vote on folks. And we paused a few times to say, this is the slate. You can look it up. So I'm not sure we could be any more transparent than that rather than voting again now. But some people are not here and so, that were here earlier in the service. So I feel like we voted and made that more of a sacred, and that was more important to us on the Leadership Council in moving forward, making it as transparent as possible and sacred. So I'm sorry if it hasn't felt that way to you. Are there, call to question, I heard, does anybody have any other comments that they want to make about the agenda? Hearing none, we're going to vote. The vote is to approve the agenda as you see here for the rest of our business meeting. You can't read it? Oh, I will say it. Oh, you're right. It's not quite dark enough. We approved, we called us back to order. We approved the last year's minutes. We're approving the agenda now. I will announce our intentional interim minister. We will then move into a series of financial reports and then discussion on each of those. And then we will approve the budget. We will answer the financial questions, of which I've gotten one, and then we will end the business meeting. All right. Any other questions or clarifications on that? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's been so noted. There's one hand was raised. All right. The motion is approved. We will move into the rest of the agenda. And I know this is really small too. This is mostly for my notes to read it. Our new Reverend Dr. Pam Peterson will be starting February 1st as our intentional interim minister. She is from Western New York State. She has served UCC churches in northeastern U.S. as well as in Red Lodge, Montana. And there's some interesting things that have happened in Red Lodge during her tenure, including fires and floods. She is a passionate eco-theologian, which we'll get to hear what that means when she starts. She has a doctorate in ministry from Hartford International University for Religion and Peace. Her ministerial focus is to create safe spaces for laughter, healing, and grace. She has also been trained as a disaster or trauma chaplain. So remember the Red Lodge. I don't think we can throw anything at her that will really throw her, since she has had to deal with a community that was literally the basement of their church was flooded, and they had fires within less than a mile away from their church, all within the same year or two that she was there. Her dogs, Buddy and Bonnie, will be joining her, and they traveled. This is another point you can talk with her about. She traveled the Lewis and Clark Trail as a model of transitional ministry. Interesting. And her pronouns are she, her. So we wanted to announce that we have hired her. We've found her a place to live until the parsonage is free, and then she will be in the parsonage starting in April. She will be on staff starting February 1. She'll be commissioned I think on the 2nd, and then her first preaching here will be the second week of February. Any questions about that? I've talked a little bit in a few announcements I've made about what an intentional interim minister is. Let me just reiterate that a little bit. We felt that, and this was before the fitness review, we were already discussing the fact that whenever a minister is here for 20 years, a congregation needs a break, not calling somebody right away if you're going to replace that person, but really thinking about and discerning who we want to be as a congregation. Intentional interim ministers have been trained specifically to lead congregations through that healing, grief process, because any leaving is a grief. Any breaking, severing of a relationship, which is necessary when a minister moves on, does cause a lot of grief within the congregation and within each of us. So we have intentionally hired somebody who is really good at thinking through that with us on an individual and as a congregation. She will set up many different ways to meet with her and talk with her and to share your thoughts about where we are, what we should do differently, what we should keep, and where we should move forward. So that is her service to us will be between 18 and 24 months, and really that depends on us. How much time do we need to move us through this process and to get to where we're ready to say, this is where we're going as a church? But typically it's kind of 1.5 to 2 years. So that's our intent, and we're really excited to have her join us on this journey. And anyone who feels the need to talk to somebody, she will be here February 1st and available if you have not felt like you could come to any of us directly, and especially if you feel like you really need some one-on-one what to do. Yes, George? I did, yeah. So she will be in the parsonage eventually after our, we have that being rented to Rainbow Villages for a trans family right now. They will be moving out the end of March, and she will be moving in there. She's found a temporary apartment for a couple months in the interim. So she will be here in Fort Collins starting February 1st. All right. Now we move into the fun part. Our financial status. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to present on just some summary, high level, and then give it to George, our treasurer, to go over the numbers. But I wanted to mostly just go through some big picture things in thinking about where did we end 2024. The Budget and Finance Committee had a hard time in 2024. There was so much change, and it did not pencil out, it did not work the way it has in years past. We also had many wonderful things that we accomplished. Think of the many deferred maintenance projects that actually happened. We replaced our roof. We and did upgrades to the parsonage. That was approximately $180,000 that we budgeted for all of that. That was so needed because those were deferred maintenance projects that were deferred for way too long. So it was absolutely a need. We were able to do a Raise the Roof campaign that in a week we raised $70,000. So we paid ourselves back quite a big chunk of that, but not all the way, about half the cost of the roof. So we ended 2024 with a deficit of about $65,000, and you'll see the numbers when we go to the next page. And there's a few things that happened. We, in order to upgrade the parsonage, we didn't have anybody living in it, so we deferred some income there, as well as the Montessori school, which will be moving in before next August and setting up. They had anticipated being in there this fall. We had thought about some income from them as well. So we didn't have as much income as we anticipated, and then we had folks who left the church. And I say willingly, so some people decided that with the fitness review, or maybe because of things around Hal, left the church willingly and did not fully pay their pledges. And that's totally understandable. I'm just trying to, here's some reasons why the budget is where it is. And then we also had a significant number of members of our membership who died in this last year. And of course, we're not expecting their estate or anything to pay those pledges. So with that, I've got the numbers, and I'm going to hand it to George.
Hi there. Okay, so here are the numbers for 2024, and this is our cash position as of the end of the year, or January 1st. So we have a total cash of around $250,000 if we take away the designated and reserve funds for the various funds we have. We have available cash of $143,000 and change. So in 2024, we fell short of our projection in pledges by $64,350 almost. And our total income was short by $88,267. Our operating expenses, on the other hand, were a plus. So we spent almost $24,000 less than we had anticipated. So if you take the total income in 2024, subtract the total expenses of almost $24,000, we're left with almost, we'll call it $64,600 in deficit. Now, where did that money come from? Comes from cash. So if we didn't have the deficit, we'd actually have about $200,000 in available cash, which in my personal estimation is what we ought to have in cash. It represents about 3 months of operation. So there's the news for 2024. Any questions? I'll come back in a little bit with the budget for 2025. Hearing no questions? Oh, yes?
There's $110,000 essentially up there in designated and reserve funds. Can you expound a little bit on, I don't, and there may be people here that have not studied things enough budgetarily wise.
Okay.
Budget-wise, sorry.
Everybody got the full, okay, you all got the full financials. In those financials are a whole bunch of funds that people donate to, okay, and those are not to be touched by the church for any reason but those various funds.
Men's Fellowship has one.
Huh?
Men's Fellowship.
Men's Fellowship has one. Gosh, there's a bunch. O&M has one. Outreach and Mission has one.
The youth group for their mission trip. I'm sorry, the youth group for their mission trip. When I sell the coffee, that's an in and out account, so it's set aside in this way. And some of those benefit areas of our church on a yearly basis, or if there's outstanding needs. So with the coffee sales, we say that's for the youth mission trips and our whole lives, that this sexual assault or sexual, I cannot talk anymore today. You know what it means. Okay, so there's lots of accounts like that that are in and out, and those are set aside, but we also do have a few designated reserves, like for the building and things like that.
Yeah. And they're all listed in detail in the financial report you got. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you. I'll be back in a little bit.
Similarly, with the proposed budget, we're proposing a budget that actually has a deficit, so I wanted to highlight that right up front. That's been the case for the last few years. It's been more on the orders of $60,000, $70,000 is written in as a fundraiser to happen later or something like that. We didn't put it that way. We actually put it as we have a deficit budget, and we'll figure out, is it a fundraiser? Is it new pledges that come in? We'll figure that out later on. That's our proposal. But when we got to the Budget and Finance Committee, when we got to where all these reductions, if we reduced any more, we felt like we were really eating into critical mission-related activities. And I mean mission as in who we are as a church as a whole, not just outreach and mission, but the critical workings of our church. Felt like to cut any more would significantly impact that, so we stopped. And we are bringing it to you that way. Much of the program side of the budget looks pretty similar to how it has in years past. If you looked at the detailed budget, you can see that kind of side by side. There's minor increases and minor decreases in areas that some of that's right sizing, and I'll mention those in just a second. The real major changes are really around personnel. The budget there, we have $200,000 savings there, or it's reduced by $200,000. And personnel as a percentage of the total budget was 78% last year, and it's 70% this year. That also feels more right-sized, I think, to the Budget and Finance Committee. So with the personnel changes, we have no senior minister budgeted for this year or church administrator, and we added the intentional interim minister salary for 11 months because she's starting February 1st. We did have the payout of Hal's paid time off balance, which that's Colorado law says right after the last day that a person works, you figure out what their balance is and you pay them that balance. That payment hit this fiscal year. We also have an increase in our contract with the accounting firm. So while we don't have a church administrator, we are working with an accounting firm we've worked with in the past to help us with the financials. And that's about $2,000 a month. We have also other adjustments with our UCC donations. We changed them around to where more of that goes to the local, the RMC, because Leadership Council and the Budget and Finance recognized we were getting a lot of benefit and use with the support from the Rocky Mountain Conference, not so much nationally. And so we reduced our national contributions and increased our Rocky Mountain contributions a little bit, the balance of those funds. We did increase outreach and mission budget by $5,000. The request was to go up to $15,000. We didn't feel like we could really do that this year. We hoped to, but that's one of the final things we kind of cut. But we did give them an increase of $5,000. And our music director agreed to a salary reduction, keep maintaining full benefits. Let's see. And then we adjusted program staff pension contributions from, it was last year, and I'm not sure how long before that, 14% was being put into their pension payments. That's higher than most nonprofits are. So for program staff, we reduced that to 7%. We do have contracts with our called minister, Marta, and our intentional interim minister, and the recommendation through the UCC and what's in their contract is for 14%. And that is apparently mirrors what school districts tend to pay. That's what I've been told. So now I'm going to go to the numbers and give it back to George.
Okay, so we're looking here at budget to budget, 24 budget versus the 25 budget. Our pledge income right now, folks who have pledged, is $596,000, so call it almost $600,000. We're budgeting our total income at just a little over $750,000. The rest of that income consists of new folks who join and pledge, and use of the church for other functions, etc. So our total income is $754,000 almost. Our expenses, the personnel expenses, as Terry mentioned, have come down significantly from $768,000 budgeted in 2024 to $560,500 almost in the 2025 budget. Total operating expenses is also about $200,000 less than we budgeted in 2024. So we have $790,836 in total operating expenses. And so the budget shows a deficit of almost $37,000.
So thank you. A couple people put stickies on the back around the financials. And the first thing was to thank you for sharing salary details. I know this is a vulnerable time or a vulnerable thing to do, but so important. So for those that looked at the full budget and the packet, we did include the detailed information about personnel costs. So if you didn't see that, we have additional copies of that we can hand out afterwards if you're interested. And then the one question that was up there was, did we not reimburse staff for mileage before? Do you know? I know the answer to that.
We staff, you mean program staff?
Staff and ministers.
Oh, staff and ministers. Yeah, we did, and I don't know why it was missing from the budget. Huh?
Hal had a car allowance.
Yeah. Hal had a car allowance, and so now we have. Is it a mileage allowance we're giving them? Yeah.
We will. We put a mileage allowance in this budget, in the 2025 budget, because that's also something that in the call agreements, it calls out that we should be doing that for our ministers at least. It may be under more discretion area or something. I can't remember where I stuck it in.
It's under their.
It wasn't in their personnel costs. It's actually under the administration costs, I think is where we put it, George. It was like $1,000, something like that, for each. It's reimbursement, so. $1,250, okay, yeah. They found it.
Yeah. I can add a little more information. So there are a couple of sections in the budget that kind of pertain to this stuff. It can be professional expenses or the mileage reimbursement, car allowance. Those are some of the phrases I've seen in budgets about this sort of working reimbursement. And so as we go into this year, we're going to be listening to the staff about kind of, in my mind, I'm asking what reimbursements are there versus what are they asking for. So if there is an amendment to the budget this year later on, it's to incorporate more the real stuff that matters to them, but also matters to our church how we meet them financially. I just wanted to add some comments there.
That's Elaine, who will be the treasurer starting now. No, at the end of this meeting.
Okay, any other questions before I leave? Yeah.
Ken Morrison. I didn't do my due diligence and study the personnel salary breakdown. But we've had what I perceive as a wonderful music director for 7 years. And through no fault of performance or any other situation, he has been given a substantial $20,000 annually reduction in his salary. The reason given to us for that reduction was less responsibility and less work. Again, I don't have a figure for his total salary at this time, but $20,000 is certainly a substantial portion of that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I just ask everyone to look at the numbers. Operating net operations is well over $500,000. And we're taking a staff member that has given us 7 years of hard work and exemplary job performance, in my humble opinion. And again, through no fault of his own, we're making it where he'll have to make some cost of living adjustments. And I would, and it's not the right time for a motion or anything, but I would move that we take another glance at what we're doing. Do we want to retain our current music programs director? Or do we want to lose him to another church for whatever reason? This, I realize we've got hard issues with the budget up there. But that's not a soft thing to do for a staff person that has given us good performance and like I say, put yourself in his position, and how are you going to feel at that point in this situation? We have budget problems, no question. I'm not making light of that, but
Megan wanted to respond.
I can speak just a little bit to that. I started, before I was even on council, talking to Eldon personnel a little bit about things that go into the budget, some of our practices at Plymouth, and just challenging some thinking around those practices. I think one thing you have to be very careful of is these are people, and we are talking about people and their livelihood. We're also talking about some gender inequity that we've had in our budget for a very long time. And because it's the norm doesn't mean it doesn't need to be adjusted. We've had some inequities in how we provide raises over the time. So a 6% raise for everyone, whether you're making $180,000 versus $47,000, is not equitable. And so, Ken, you're absolutely right. When we talk about people and we're talking about a product, that is hard because that's livelihood. At the same time, when you're talking about the entire picture and you're talking about equity, those changes are hard. Those are really difficult conversations. And so what I want to ensure people, those conversations have been 12, 18 months in the making. None of these decisions were made lightly. The stakeholders were not left out of those conversations. I know that John and Eldon and people have had conversations that include those stakeholders. But we had a budget that wasn't equitable. And it's taking time, and it's taking really close analysis of how to bring equity into what we're doing. So when you put a name on it, and we have to do that as Christians, absolutely 100%, and at the same time, we have to think beyond the name also.
Hold on, we also listened to, in those budget planning meetings that we had in the fall, people looked at the budget, and what stood out was that they said this was recommended by many people who came to those budget meetings because the individual was the highest paid employee at Plymouth. And that didn't seem equitable at the time. We do have recommendations for what we pay our ministers, and we were, again, saying right-sizing our budget. This seemed like a reset, and it was done in conversation.
Okay, the 6% that you mentioned, Megan, that's not current policy.
No, not anymore.
Well, okay, would you state what the current policy for
For 2025,
cost,
no one...
for COLA
Yes.
adjustments?
No one got a COLA this year. We couldn't afford to do that. So
Again, that has been modified. And can
there-
someone state what that
is
is?
there the COLA? What is our...
COLA's around, you mean what's the national average for COLA?
What's our policy?
We
Our
changed,
policy, I don't know that it's a policy, but we have given salary increases before equal to COLA, or maybe a little more. And this year it's supposed to be something a little under 3%. And we're not giving any increases this year. No COLA.
Forgive me if this doesn't answer your question, but last year we did something different with the way that we did raises. And for COLA is that we gave a different percentage based on where people were in the amount that they earned. And so people who, yes, last year, that's what I'm saying, last year. So this year we didn't give any COLA raises. Last year, people who were the lower paid employees received much higher percentages. I believe it was 15, does that? Yep, so they're 15%, and then the highest paid employee, I think, got 3, which ultimately, last year, again, this is not this year, last year's budget reflected that as a way for people to become more equitable in what we saw as being really disparate pay, particularly people who were the lowest paid employees. We were trying to raise them up a little bit because they were below standards. And so does that answer the question? Last year we did do that. This year we didn't have the money to do that. But we're trying to be more equitable in the way that raises are given moving forward as well.
So the statement was made that, everybody got a 6% raise.
That was prior to 2024.
Megan just made that statement.
Correct. Prior to 2024, so in the years 2023 and preceding, when COLA adjustments were made in my time in Leadership Council, there was a flat percentage that was applied across the board to everybody. Last year, that was reevaluated, and the raises were given in a much different way, which we thought to be more equitable. And then this year, based on a lack of budgetary resources, we weren't able to give any increases.
Right, because of the budgetary problems.
Correct.
But just to reiterate, we have a 7-year employee that we made adjustments in his cost of living for 424.
Yes.
He got less than everybody else.
No, the percentage he was given
He got
would have probably been still.
he got a smaller percentage. You said 3%.
No, I don't believe he was 3%. I believe Hal was 3%. I don't recall what Mark received. I want to say it was 6, but I don't have that number in front of me. But percentage-wise, that would have been a higher amount of money than the other paid employees who received less than him.
But there
because
was
of the
an
way-
adjustment to a normal where you give lesser paid employees a larger percentage increase
Correct.
for cost of living.
Yes.
Right. There was that adjustment.
Last year, yes.
Okay. And again, I won't waste any more of everyone's time, and I'm sorry.
No, that's helpful.
But-
I wasn't on council for 2024, so I didn't have all that background either, so it's helpful
But
for
we
me
have
as
a
well.
situation where we're taking a lot of money away, and a lot of people may not know all the things that staff do. They attend all the leadership meetings, deacons, trustees, they're always there.
No, they don't. The staff don't. Not all the staff. They're
No,
assigned to.
not all the staff,
Yeah.
but there are staff members at all the major meetings
Yes.
every time. For one, Mark is always at the deacons meeting. Always. He does a lot of other things other than run the, and that, like I
Yes.
say,
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's another question in back there, and then I see one up here too.
I have two quick questions. Could you explain the increase in church use income, which I must have missed someplace? It jumped significantly. And the other question...
That's for the, let me just do that one quick.
Yeah.
That's for the Montessori school.
And when do they start?
They start in August.
Okay. And then the other question is, why does the administrative assistant not get any benefits?
Our policy right now, which we will be revisiting, is that staff that are not full-time do not receive benefits. There's been discussion about whether we should give some benefits or prorated or whatever, and that will definitely be explored in this next year.
This is just Judy Lane. This is just a quick numbers question. George, you can probably answer this. Our dues to the RMC, Rocky Mountain Conference, was based on census. This is for the proposed budget. And you're saying that our census, we think, will be 442 members at $25 each. That's what we normally pay. It's always been that.
We've been paying 15, so we upped it to 25.
I would like to know, was that a direction from the conference to say we should raise it to 25 per person? Or is
No.
that at our discretion? Because it raises our dues to the conference, which some of us have some real questions about them, from $6,315 last year to $11,050 this year. Terry or George?
But notice that we've also decreased our, that top line to $10,000 to national. Last year it was $25,800. So we increased one side, we drastically reduced the other.
Do you think that our census is accurate that you proposed for next year? You have it down as 442 members.
That's what, at the time that we prepared the budget, that's what the record showed.
Do we know what it is today?
That's the latest number we had.
The The only other thing is the personnel cost under 6,500 is raised from 4,268 to 17,972. I'm missing why it would have jumped up. That's the last line in 6560 payroll expenses.
That's the payout for house.
What's that?
What, did that include his payout?
I think that's the payout for house paid time off.
Yeah, which was 15,000 something.
That does it.
Yeah. 15,500 roughly.
So my question is back to health insurance for the administrative assistant. When I was treasurer, we used the Affordable Care Act definition, which is 30 hours per week, to provide benefits. How many hours is Anne Marie working?
I defer that.
She's less than that. It's 28 or 24 hours a week. We're still exploring what it would be if she gets health insurance on the marketplace and whether we could cover that or not. We would really like to do that in the future.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Linda Preston. I wanted to help kind of put a reflection on your comments, and I appreciate that. You know, what's in the news right now is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do a really good job of diversity and inclusion as we talk. What you're talking about today in the finances for staff is equity. And so we're trying to build the bottom end so that it is indeed more equitable for the staff as a total going forward. Does that reflect what you're saying? Okay. The only question I had about that was, I really appreciated that you kept the benefit package for Mark. But I didn't
Benefit
understand.
package, I'm sorry.
But he did lose a lot in the pension line, and I wondered why that was that way.
The pension line is for all program staff, so Anna as well as Mark and Brooklyn. Well, each of them is reduced. Because his salary went down, the pension automatically goes down. And then there is the going from 14% to 7%. We'll check the math and make sure that that's right. Yeah, it looked a little high to me too. I think I checked at one point, but we'll check it again.
And no other benefits were affected. Yeah.
Terry, my understanding is that part of the reason for that reduction in pension for non-ordained staff has to do with whether they're eligible for Social Security or
so
not.
I was wrong on that.
Oh, never mind.
But I will say, yes, I've been corrected. But the issue is that 14% is way high for any nonprofit. Most nonprofits give about 6%. They pay 6% of the pension, and employees can match that. Usually it's actually that way. You have to put in money, and if you decide to put in money, that your organization will match up to 6%. So we felt keeping 7% is in line with most nonprofits out there. For ministers, it's more, the Rocky Mountain Conference and the UCC, what they recommend, and what they're recommending, at least this is what my understanding is, that it's along the lines of what happens in the public schools in this region. So it's done at a regional level, and that's closer to 14%, and that's why they're recommending that for ministerial staff.
Jim Cooney, just quickly, anytime people put together a budget, I am eternally grateful, particularly when you've got such reduced resources as well. And moreover, I honestly didn't know what the ministers were being paid here. I worked in education where salaries are okay, not nearly as low as they are in churches. So thanks to everybody who works for us for these very low salaries. The one question, and it's really just a follow-up to the point here, if the amount that we pay to the Rocky Mountain Conference, which there is some controversy about the role they've played, if that's discretionary, why in the world would we choose this year to increase it from $15 a member to $25 a member? I think you might be able to give me examples of why it's better, but I look at that and I have some concerns.
So we had a conversation in the Budget and Finance and then in Leadership Council. And while Erin has not necessarily been in front of you all, she's been at the end of the phone anytime we've ever called. And she's trying to serve 70 churches. And she's really the only program staff we have in the Rocky Mountain Conference. So in recognition of we've taken a lot of their time and benefited from their thought leadership in what we're doing. That was one of the reasons why we reduced as a whole, but we thought we've gotten a lot from the local more so than the national, and so that's why we changed our contribution distribution. But Megan?
I would just also add that a fitness review is somewhat of a national piece as well. And so to hold the Rocky Mountain Conference accountable for all of that is not actually placing the accountability necessarily in the right spot. The Rocky Mountain Conference does way more for us beyond that. They do a ton for our youth when it comes to things like La Foret and Rocky Mountain annual meetings, youth annual meetings. So there is this very large presence about the fitness review right now, and I think we do need to remember that is a national component of our denomination, not just the conference. And our conference is offering way more than what did we receive during the fitness review from one or the other.
Any other questions?
I have a question, excuse me, about the agenda because in the bulletin it says after financial presentation, conversation. I believe on the board it said financial presentation questions. And I believe everybody so far has been asking questions, but will we still have a conversation time?
Yes, that's what this is a conversation about.
So that conversation is in place. Okay. Yes. So I'd like to speak to that point. My name is Bill Thompson, and I served on the stewardship board 4 years. Again, I apologize for my voice, it's my autoimmune problem. I was a chair, vice chair 1 year, chairman 2 years, and I know the difficulty of what's happening in terms of pledging. And I look at what happened to the pledges this year, a significant drop. And I think that's something that we should really be concerned about. There could be a lot of different reasons for that. So in my conversation, I'm going to tell you about my concern and what I speculate as what has happened, what's happening now, and what will happen in the future as a result of this. I think that maybe the main reason the pledging went down is we are in a time of uncertainty and turmoil. And so maybe, when people pledge, they're really voting, in a sense, about how they feel about the church. So I think there was a lot of uncertainty. And I don't know about the people who are feeling that what happened to Hal was right and good for the church, if that affected their pledging. But I would speculate those who were concerned about the process for Hal perhaps were not pledging as much or not pledging at all. And I'm going to say, I think this church probably was lucky that the pledge era ended before the final outcome with Hal. Because those of us who thought it was not going well for Hal, and it should not have been going that way, still had hope at that point of the pledging time. So what's going to happen? Well, I'll talk about those who are not happy about the results. There are those who will stay in the church and they will continue to pledge, but I don't see any reason for them to increase their pledging as a result of what's happening. We have those who are staying and they may reduce their pledge. They may reduce their activity in the church. We have those who are staying and they may stop pledging. And we're going to lose membership. We're going to lose membership. I don't know what the numbers will be. I would be willing to speculate. We may actually lose members more now than those members who left because of Hal. So I think we're in a downward spiral in this church. And finances are very, very important. You know, we need the money because we have programs. And when you have programs, you have personnel. And so I would suggest that because of what's happening financially, those of you who feel that what took place with Hal and the results of it, I would say I encourage you to increase your giving. I think that's absolutely essential, you know. You got what you wanted. Show us your vote by making up for what I anticipate, if nothing else changes, even lowered pledging and a smaller budget if you do not. Thank you for letting me express my opinions.
All right, Bill, thanks.
Bob Jeffrey. I've been a member of this church for 16 years, and it changes. People change, people come and go. Some pass away, some move on, some don't like what's going on, so they leave. That's their preference. Every church has ebbs and flows. There's something called the wave theory of organizations. You might have heard of it. It starts where you form, and then you storm, and then you norm, and everything gets stuck. And the wave theory is that if you don't catch the next wave, you crash and burn. So what I've seen over the last couple of years is where we've reached that height and we stopped growing, stopped changing. And I guarantee you that if we just start looking forward rather than looking backward, we will increase our membership. The church is more than a pastor. The church is the people. Yeah. Meg said I should do that thing with the church and open it up. I can't do that, so thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right, any other questions or concerns about the budget? Back in the back, Carlos.
I can't see. Oh, Burley. Here, Burley.
Just talk into this? Okay. I think Marta and Brooklyn have done a marvelous job of holding this church together. way people get together, upward and onward.
That's verily speaking for all the young people in the church.
Thank you. Carlos Sosa. I wanted to talk briefly about a line item that isn't on the budget, but that we may want to have. If it's true that the Rocky Mountain Conference has not asked for an increase from us and that they don't have any plans for what to do with those increased funds compared to what they saw last year, then I would suggest that it may be more prudent to take that increase and set it actually aside instead for something like a legal defense fund. The reason I say that is because the Bishop Buddy that we so prayed for has not only received death threats for what she has said, a representative in Tennessee called for her deportation. I don't know what the rest of this year is going to hold, but I think that I would rather have a legal defense fund for our ministers, for our staff, for immigrants, for whoever was going to need it this year. If we don't need it, great, we can reapportion that somewhere else, but maybe better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos, for saying that. I would just caution that we will move fast, but we can't quite move that fast to say that's our highest priority, but it does feel, I agree with you, in my heart it feels very urgent. We can do that outside of the budget too as a congregation. We can do some of that, and I hear you, and let's talk about that as we move forward. And Elaine?
Just to add to this, the conference, RMC, does have a lawyer, as does UCC, and we have called upon legal advice from them. And so in that situation, we would actually lean on them first, okay? And so that is a safety net that the conference and the denomination provides. That is what we are paying for. And just, it is not just one thing. It is all of these resources and in conversation, which as your lay leaders, we really are thinking about these conversations and talking to staff regularly. Previously, I had assumed conversations with staff were happening around budget line items. Now I know they're happening, and I need you all to trust and ask questions continually. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Terry.
Yeah.
I had one more question on Betsy Bedient. Are we still doing Share the Plate? Because I think that was a way to increase the outreach and missions budget, because those funds often went to organizations or causes that they would have funded.
Yes, so that's the reason that we're hoping to put $15,000 into their budget, was because the Share the Plate was administratively hard to tackle every month, and it was just a big. That seemed like it was more trouble than it was worth in one sense, and so that's why we shifted to increasing their budget so they could to make up for that. We are going to be we may be doing things a little bit differently with the pledge or with the plate, the loose offering with the plate. On certain Sundays, we may have certain things that we're going to give within the UCC, our Church's Wider Mission, which supports our mission work around the world. You may see some of that coming up in the future. That's one thing we were recognizing, that we were no longer doing those days. So our gift to some of that work has been down. So that's another reason why we wouldn't want to completely stop giving to the national UCC, because that also supports our mission work. So there's a lot of things just to, you all may be really angry about one thing, but as Elaine was saying, the church is many things and supports us in that process in many, many ways.
I'm Jessica. I'm a new member. I joined last year, which means none of the pledge or anything was in with me. There were 8 other people in my class, which would have been, we're talking about a lot of losses, but there's some gains here too.
I'm Ann Jordan, and I want to thank the people who stood up and said things that were hard to say. We need to be honest with each other, and we need to listen with curiosity to understand. And so that's what I've been trying to do. It's not easy, but there's going to be a workshop by a group called Braver Angels, whose mission is to depolarize our country, teaching people to listen with curiosity. And this particular workshop coming up on the 8th of February is depolarizing within, seeing what in myself tends to stereotype other people and demonize them, and what can I do to change that within? What can I do when I'm with like-minded people and things start to rise up, to kind of intervene? And I think that's critical politically. I think that's pretty critical right here with my siblings in Plymouth. And I just really am glad to be here. And if you want more information about the Braver Angels, I would be happy to tell you.
Wonderful, thank you. I feel like we're about ready to call the question. So we have a motion to approve the budget as proposed. Second in the back, Carl. Carl? Yes. Yeah. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Okay. I see 4 hands. The motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of things to say. Number one, has nothing to do with the budget. Number one, if you haven't signed the picture back there for Hal, it's back there on a table. If you want, just sign it. We have a border around it. It's plenty big for all signatures. Number two, I appreciate again the time to serve, and I'm taking a break. See you later.
So I wanted to just take a moment, Brooklyn, if you want to come up here. You can't imagine what our staff and how hard the staff of this church has worked. I raised 3 kids, got my doctorate of ministry, and was a pastor of a solo church. And it wasn't as hard as this last year. I'm like a master multitasker, and so is Brooklyn, and so is the rest of our staff. It took a lot. And so I wanted you to hear that. I am so grateful for the team that we have here. They're brilliant and talented, and it has been, there's been lots of tensions, right? And it's complicated in coming here every day and doing this work. So I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you. And for the rest of them that aren't here. And so now we're going to do a little...
The moment we've all been waiting for. Okay, so we have 2. Okay, we have 2 Flamey Grant tickets that have been graciously donated to the church. Yeah, someone in the community, not even a church person. Or at least not our church, anyway. Get out your tickets. Hope you didn't throw them away. And then I also have 3 sets of 2 Youth for Change tickets. And the good news about the Youth for Change tickets is they're actually free, and you can get them at PlymouthUCC.org/youthforchange. Okay, our first set of Youth for Change tickets. Are you ready? 159867. Are you here? Oh! All right. Yeah, it was Julie. Yep. I just want to make sure you all show up. The youth have been working so hard. Okay. Our next set of Youth for Change tickets, 159867. Woohoo! Yes, thank you. And our final set will go to 159861. Woohoo! Okay. Now here's the tickets you actually have to pay for. Oh, yeah, we'd love your donations. Yes, at Youth for Change. Yes, we're trying to house college students. It's very important. Okay. Who laughed at me? Okay. 159858. Woo! You're going to Flamey Grant! Yes, everybody stand. I have a quick benediction for us, and then we'll sing together. We're going to sing first, and then I'm going to do the benediction. Okay, I invite you to open out your hands and receive this blessing. This was written by the entire Christian Formation Board. I know, and we offer it to you now. Following the life and teaching of Jesus, we welcome and celebrate differing and distinct backgrounds or beliefs, race, ethnicity, and disabilities. We welcome the newly born, or if you're celebrating your 120th year. Woman, man, or non-binary, we believe all are equal here. LGBTQ+ or straight, we celebrate all colors of life. Married, divorced, or single, within these walls, you won't encounter strife. Immigrant or local, we embrace your journey. Wherever you may be within the spectrum of life's diversity, we honor and practice God's radical love for each and every one of you. For exactly who you are and where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Amen. Amen.